I used to make a joke that I came out of the womb with a top hat, a cane, and tap shoes. So I was always an entertainer. And my father is a true crime author who writes about sociopaths and psychopaths and murders. And so when you grow up with that kind of contrast, it's either I would either cry or die, or I had to be funny, because I was constantly seeing like police file photos of severed heads and like bodies crushed and sawed up into 12 pieces. So the making of a comedian, because I would have to make jokes about it. So I'd say I was kind of born an entertainer. It wasn't until I was in my teens that, my father used to say at the dinner table, you're such a pretty girl. Why do you have to make these faces? And I was like, what faces? And he'd say, you make these horrible faces. You're such a pretty girl. And he'd say, wait, we should get you an agent. One day he finally said, you can make money doing that. So I've always loved to make people laugh, and that's my true passion in life. So I think one thing led to another, and I used to do musicals and Broadway, and then film and television came knocking, and it was so much fun that the rest is history. In my mind, so I was a comedic actress, and I thought of horror as dramatic acting, but essentially there is a lot of comedy. There has to be a contrast of comedy in horror, and so I never saw myself doing that. But when I ended up getting 2 jobs doing it, I realized that comedy and horror go hand in hand, and so and it was unexpected delight for me.
That woman's acting would be wretched in a porno film.
He's right. I've seen her in a couple of them. She's really bad.
I don't know. I thought there was something really
Shut up, scrote. Give me a cup of coffee. Hey, Sandra.
It was an audition. Urban Legends was an audition, and to play an actress. So playing an actress was I basically took myself as a 20-something and amped it up to an obnoxious level. but it was fun to do a send-up on the stereotypes of actresses and whatnot.
Sandra! Listen, let's try something new this time. Why don't you get it right, or I'll kill you! Okay?
That role of Sandra in Urban Legends Final Cut was fun. It was all about fun and having a good time, and John Ottman, the director, allowed for a lot of creative freedom to be spontaneous and goofy. And my favorite scene in Urban Legends The Final Cut was the shower scene of making the film of the film that Jennifer Morrison's character was creating. And it was almost like an I Love Lucy sketch. And if you watch the outtakes of it, everybody's laughing, no one can keep a straight face. And the truth is, and the irony I found in making horror films, is that they were the most fun, comedic, joyful, silly, pleasant, delightful experiences. And you would never think that, with blood and guts and gore and knives and murder, it could be such a good time.
It's an urban legend. You mean like that girl who eats a burrito with a pregnant roach and all the eggs hatch inside of her nose? Or like that girl who takes a bite of a chicken sandwich and she discovers that the mayonnaise is really pus from a chicken tumor? And then there's that guy who has this nasty case of crabs and he goes to unzip his fly and there's a whole...
You definitely have the idea.
The Mayday in the Mile High Club is one of the most memorable experiences I've had as an actor, because it was a fake plane on hydraulics, and I was in this tiny little bathroom making out with some Canadian guy, and I didn't even know his name, and he was so nervous, and he had braces, I think, like behind his teeth, and his lip kept getting stuck in his braces. And then he hadn't put deodorant on because he didn't want to sweat through his shirt, and he was worried he stunk, so he was trying to make out with me with his arms next to his side. And it was, those are the things behind the scenes that nobody knows about. And I'll never forget having my legs up in that bathroom, and the camera underneath. That was one of my first experiences of like making out on film with another actor. But it was such a surreal experience to fit ourselves into this tiny space. I think that it was kind of like Airplane, like the comedy Airplane. Like you said, it was an homage to several films and to the genre itself. I just feel honored to have been a part of something that was, I'd say campy, but it's more than that. It's a love letter to the genre in a way. Working with John Ottman was really special because he's a composer, and so he approached directing differently than most directors, and he saw the film as a symphony, and each player as an instrumentalist, and each actor as a sound. And so he really allowed everyone to bring their own rhythm and tone and timbre, and he really trusted the way each separate part came together to create a picture. So he really supported all the actors and all the creative talent and the crew, everyone in stepping into their optimal talent and skill, and that trust, that freedom he allowed us as actors. Anson Mount, Eva Mendes, Anthony Anderson, I mean, gosh, Jennifer Morrison, Matt Davis, Loretta Devine. Some of my favorite memories are with Loretta and just watching her work and her comedic skills. I mean, he really allowed, because it wasn't his previous experience, there was actually a strength in that because he didn't have a preconceived notion or a set bounds that we had to stay within. It allowed for a certain spontaneity and freedom for each of us to really express our own, I'd say, uniqueness, which brought a lot of colorful texture and joy to the film. Everybody was so fun on Urban Legends, and we all hung out as a family because we were in Vancouver, and I remember at the time there were snowstorms, and we're in a foreign country, we're all in our early 20s. We became a family, so we all hung out together, Jennifer and Matt, and I think Loretta and the adults, they kind of had their own group, but Eva and we spent time in each other's hotel rooms, and we bonded and we went shopping together, and I would say the whole cast was really very close, and it was like a party, really. We had a good time, and we laughed, and we went shopping together, and we had cocktails and all the things you do on locations, and we went dancing, and there was a really special familial bond between the cast, and we were all very young, so it was like a celebration. I mean, we had a good time all the time. Performing your own death on camera is one of the most, it's completely surreal. It's almost like an out-of-body experience, and you have to distance yourself from it, or else it's actually very traumatic. And I realized early on in Urban Legends that if I were connected to it and perceiving it as my own death, and this is what an actor does. People say, oh, well, you're lucky you're an actor, you can lie, you can fake it, but a good actor doesn't lie, and they don't fake anything. They actually tune in to the most authentic, honest part of themselves, and they allow that, they embody that character, and you feel it all. It's actually truth for an actor, and that's why it works on camera, right? So that was such a torturous death scene in Urban Legends because I was being chased with that knife, and I realized early on, if I stay connected to this, I'm going to be in therapy for 15 years. So I developed this trick, and if you watch the film, you can see it, where instead of trying to feel into it and go to this traumatized place, I would speed up my breath. And before every take, John would say, you've got your 30 seconds for your breath, and I would go. So right as they started rolling or doing sound speed, I would hyperventilate. So by the time the camera was rolling, I realized when someone's afraid, what happens? Your heart beats fast. Your respiration increases. So if I could physically, I would literally just tune in. I would create the physical response. I'd run in place and I'd hyperventilate, and then I would be right there. And I remember it was like an out-of-body experience, running through that editing bay and kind of seeing myself from above and having to literally distance myself from it, as if it's hard to explain. I had to disconnect from it and let it be very primal, but at the same time have this awareness in my mind, this isn't real. I see the boom, I see the lens. Because when an actor is acting, they're really experiencing it. So I had to find a way to disconnect from it while still letting it be primal. And the primal part came from the physicality of it. The clenching, I'd clench my teeth or breathe really hard or move a lot in place. And so that primal fear would translate through the body. So that's how I got through it. But I remember that scene when I died on the editing board. That's something that you can't disconnect from, because they had to not breathe for as long as I could. I'm going to get choked up now. And I remember I couldn't talk for 2 hours after I finally died. And I sat there in the hair and makeup chair with tears rolling down my face. And she was like, and she had been in the business for 40 years. And she'd done so many films, my hair and makeup artist. She said, this is what happens when actors die on screen. It's okay. And I remember being profoundly impacted by it, because it has to be real to be believed. And I remember sitting down with John and him being like, okay, well, Joey just died. All these other people, whoever just died, they went through the same thing. You're not alone. Okay. You know, it was a profound experience. I remember him struggling physically and really relying on the crew and the team and it being part of that trust because he was going through his own challenges. And I also remember, and it's all coming back to me now, being in great admiration of him for continuing and being such a professional and so dedicated and committed to it and surrendering to the process, even though he was having his own challenges. He was lovely to work with, gentle, sweet, kind soul. And again, I think the magic of good directors is their trust in the talent and the process and the whole team that's come together of artists to paint this canvas, and that openness, that allowing, that surrender. And John Ottman had that in Urban Legends, and Jamie Blanks in Valentine, that almost childlike quality of openness that allowed something to flower that still resonates with people, with a joy, a delight, a lightness of being, ironically, in horror films. And that's why they're both wonderful to work with. As a young actor working with a first-time director, you're a first-time actor, basically, and you're so grateful to have a job. The last thing you care about is that it's a new director. You just want to not screw up on camera, not get fired, and get a paycheck. So I think there's a beauty in that, especially with horror films, because you've got young talent, you've got a new director, and that innocence of both the director and the cast of this is spontaneous, we're making up as we go along, we don't have a predilection towards a perception of what it should be like, allowed us a freedom for fun, spontaneity, creativity, and I'd say off the cuff improvisations to. I think that's part of the beauty of it, actually, is the lack of preconceived notions of how things should be allowed things to flower into something new and unique that resonated. So the first time I saw Urban Legends Final Cut on screen, I was really proud because that was my first film, and Urban Legends taught me how to hold myself on camera, how to find the light, how to find my window. I learned, that was my boot camp as an actor, and that very special cast, we were all learning together for the first time, and it was kind of a coming of age for the cast and a coming of age for John Ottman, his first directing gig, and it was magical sitting in that theater because it was my first film, and to see the beauty of how many hundreds of people have to join together and work together, even in the bitter freezing cold in Canada and 20 below, and night shoots, and people are sick, and somebody's getting a divorce, and somebody's dog died, all these things are happening, and the show goes on, and how all these seemingly disparate parts unite together to create a whole. And that was truly sitting in that red velvet seat for the first time. Seeing Urban Legends was my first experience of movie magic, of seeing what's possible when a group of people come together with passion and joy and share their talents. And I was very proud of it. And it was goofy and it was campy. And, I didn't think I was doing like Schindler's List. I knew it was Urban Legends Final Cut. And that was the joy of it, is that there is a liberating effect to know that you're in a film that's just meant to entertain. It's meant to be campy, it's meant to be scary, it's meant to be goofy, it's meant to have like some inconsistencies. That's the beauty of horror. I mean, that's the beauty of the genre. And I think in making a horror film, I really learned to respect the genre. The first Urban Legend was such a unique setup. It was a new map for the horror film genre. And it broke a lot of preconceived notions of what a horror film is supposed to be. It brought an element of fun and irreverence and mystery and kind of this colorful, I'd say joy, though. The only word I can think of is joy. It brought a delight into the horror film genre that I believe changed the genre. So it was amazing to be in an audience and watch the first film, and then to end up in the second one was such a gift. As I look back, I realize I was part of that heyday of that 90s. Yeah, I was part of that it crowd. I don't think I was conscientious of it at the time. I was just working and happy to be working and happy to be getting paid. And I did feel like I lived a charmed life because the jobs would roll in and I would have a great time. And now that I look back at it, so many of these films have cult followings, and I was just doing my job. And it's such a thrill and a joy to be part of a time period that people have so many fond memories of. And there are viewing parties for Valentine. And to this day, Urban Legends or Legally Blonde, where they have theme nights around it. I mean, and it reminds people of being young and growing up. And it's almost like the 16 Candles and, it's the Ferris Bueller. These are the films. And so it's a pure delight to have been a part of that. And also, here's the irony. Those are some of my favorite films too, and I just happen to be in them. I say, I love it too. It's hard to watch yourself on screen. You get used to it, but it's such a delight to be part of something that still brings people so much joy. And I love the films too. So.